One of the last big important races has now been called. Down goes Kari Lake. Katie Hobbs was able to defeat her in the gubernatorial race in Arizona. We don't have the actual totally finalized vote count yet, but as of right now, Katie Hobbs has 50.39% of the vote to Kari Lake's 49.61. It is not gonna flip. It isn't even looking especially likely to be within that half a percentage point mandated recount. That doesn't mean that there isn't going to be a lot of continued talk about how some would really like to overturn the results of it, but it's not gonna happen at this point. Kari Lake would be an absolute disaster. We're gonna be discussing the implications of that, but first, why did she lose? Some people are surprised by this. I mean, look, Katie Hobbs is happy. She says democracy's worth the wait. Thank you, Arizona. Honored and proud to be your next governor. But some had really expected Kari Lake to win. Tommy Lauren tweeted, how does an empty pantsuit who refused to debate or even establish a platform suddenly pull out a win in Arizona? How? And well, look, I could provide a lot of reasons why Kari Lake ended up losing, but I'm actually gonna toss it over to NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard. He's got a couple of possible explanations.
She campaigned alongside Steve Bannon. She campaigned alongside one of the chief promoters of Pizzagate. She campaigned alongside an individual who promoted the notion of the war on white people. She campaigned alongside State Senator Wendy Rogers, who just earlier this year was here in Florida speaking at a white nationalist conference, somebody who frequently spews anti-Semitism. This is an individual who just last week called her Democratic opponent a pervert. This is an individual who suggested there should be perp walks for elections officials, criminal charges against individuals who oversaw COVID response in 2020 in Arizona. This is an individual who's celebrating putting a dagger into the quote, the McCain machine. She asserted that Cindy McCain wants to end America. She called Mike Lindell one of the great patriots of our time. She said Dinesh D'Souza is one of the greatest patriots in America. She suggested Paul Gosar was the kind of lawmaker our founding fathers envisioned. She called the media the right hand of the devil, the scourge of the earth. If that doesn't sound like Donald Trump, I don't know what does.
Yeah, so I don't know, Tammy, pick one of those. It's probably some of that stuff actually. But anyway, she did as the big one. Lauren Boebert's race still hasn't been called, and obviously we have the runoff in Georgia. But Jessica, what do you think about Kari Lake not gonna be the next governor of Arizona?
What's crazy is when I came to move out to LA, I drove through Phoenix and there were so many signs that were like, Kari Lake donated to Obama. Like that was the big thing that they thought would tank her campaign. That was their attack against Kari Lake. But I mean, this is someone who people know is a phony, right? They used to get their news from her. They saw that she used to be a much different person from the one that she is now. She used to donate to candidates like Obama, but then she got so caught up in the attention she was getting from being a Trump supporter. And I think honestly, people saw through that and they were like, oh, this is just about attention and power, not very popular.
Yeah, no, it is interesting how little that seemed to bother a lot of the MAGA people in Arizona once they got past the primary. I mean, look, I'm all happy and everything because she lost, but she does have very close to 50% of the vote, despite all of the things that Vaughn Hilliard pointed out. And then also, maybe we should point this out. She has no qualifications to be governor. Like, I don't even know why she was a candidate other than the fact that she was willing to say all of that crazy stuff, despite, honestly, let's keep it real, probably not believing basically anything of it. But there's all the stuff that Jessica pointed out. We know that she was friends with drag queens just a few years ago and now routinely villainizes them as part of the right-wing culture wars. So honestly, as much as I despise people like Mike Lindell and Marjorie Greene and Paul Gosar and all that, at the very least, they do seem to believe this crazy stuff. They are that deranged, they are that dumb. They're dumb ranged. But someone like Kari Lake, it's worse when you cosplay being a neo-Nazi, I think. Like when you're willing to pretend to hate these people. In the end, it's the same. You're driving, harassment campaigns and violence and murder and all of that. But it's so weird to pretend to believe this stuff. Like you look in Marjorie Greene's eyes and she really believes it. I've looked in Alex Jones's eyes. He's actually that crazy. But Kari Lake selling her soul and not even getting the seat. That doesn't mean that she's done. I'm sure Trump has future plans for her. She's not going anywhere, not even in the short term, but It's terrible, Jessica, that she could get this close to actually being in control of an entire state.
Yeah, it goes to show how much politics these days is a popularity contest, and so much more about what you say than about what kinds of concrete policies you support in your experience representing people or being someone in a community. Because Kari Lake's rise to fame essentially was her working on a news program where they had these incentives for the most views you get on social media for your segments. It was a competition among her and her coworkers, and she became addicted to this, they said, addicted to winning, addicted to getting the most views. And when Trump started running, she realized that Trump content gets the most views. Like, it was absolutely a social media game that skyrocketed her into the position she's in now, and she loved playing that game. I think that's super weird. I'm not saying it's a good reason, but it's interesting that that was her foundation for getting into politics and supporting Trump.
Well, you can add that to the list of reasons that everything about the algorithm and what we choose to watch is so terrible. I mean, it's not lost on me that yesterday our coverage of this race got 30 times the views as our coverage of the death sentences being handed down on Iranian protesters, or the fact that no matter how we approach climate change, it ends up getting a tiny fraction of the views of other stuff. That's annoying. We fight against that by continuing to cover this stuff, but there's certainly no algorithmic incentive to do so.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.